Hi there, it's me, Hannah Tiffin. Last night we had a great discussion at the UUA about the topic of self-kindness, and it's exciting because a few people had mentioned to me that they wished they had it recorded so that they could listen to some of this information. So I thought I'd record it for you and share it with you. And for those of you who were not able to be at the UUA last night, I will be excited just to have you listen for the first time. We delivered a discussion on self-kindness for the Soulful Sundown, and this was a great event for us. We spent the last 2 weeks getting ready for it and spending a lot of time thinking about self-kindness and why is it important, and more importantly, what does it mean to be kind to ourselves? I think as adults, we really get this botched up. I'll be the first to admit to you that I'm not kind to myself all the time. I think that a lot of us are very unkind to ourselves, and I think that when we look at the grand scheme of our day, if you were asked in the middle of the rush of the day, hey, did you spend time being kind to yourself? You'd probably laugh at the person that asked you a question like that, right? It's something that I think we don't really take seriously as adults, though we teach our children to be kind to others. Remember, like the everything I learned from kindergarten poster? And it's all about being kind and sharing in these things. Somewhere along the line, I think we lose that thought. It becomes something we think of as a known. I don't believe that we see it as a practice as it is. Why is it important to be kind to ourselves? I've come up with a couple different real meat and potatoes reasons. Self-kindness is directly correlated to our ideas of self-worth, being comfortable in our own skin, and feelings of love and acceptance. I'm going to say that again. Self-kindness is directly correlated to our ideas of self-worth, being comfortable in our own skin, and feelings of self-love and acceptance. That's pretty important stuff, right? Self-kindness is really how we show ourselves our self-worth. How much self-worth and self-esteem we have really does dictate how well we feel in our own skin, and how much we feel that we love ourselves and accept ourselves really does shape the filters that we look at our whole existence through. So, the self-kindness, that's really an important thing. It's the most important thing. Our level of self-kindness determines the tapes we play in our heads, which dictates our personal filters for our entire life existence. I'm going to say that one more time slowly. Our level of self-kindness determines the tapes we play in our heads, which dictates our personal filters for our entire life existence. It says a lot, right? Those tapes we play in our heads. Many of us from very, very young start playing tapes in our heads. And for me, I was an odd-looking little person, okay? And so I realized by the way that children teased me that I didn't look the same. Now, granted, I didn't. I had really curly hair. I looked kind of like Orphan Annie with a patch over one eye and glasses, and my clothes usually were kind of worn in, and I usually kind of smelled like a barnyard. And that was different from the other children. They would call me ugly. They would hit me. They would pull my hair. They would do a lot of terrible things to me. And this started a tape playing in my head. I'm different. I'm not worthy. I'm not like the other children. They don't like me. I'm not likable. Okay, so those are some of the things I'd say to myself. And as I grew up and I started looking at the differences between what I thought I looked like and what I thought pretty girls looked like, there was a big variable distance between the two. It's real hard when you're growing up and you're trying to be this individual and you want people to like you and you want to be pretty and you want people to ask you out and these types of things. And the tapes in our heads really do dictate to us what we believe and what we reflect. And so I wouldn't have thought about ever really approaching a boy because the tapes in my head said that I wasn't pretty enough. He wouldn't want to date me. He'd laugh at me. He'd hurt me. Those types of things, right? Because that's what I was used to. And as puberty stepped in, and I really started to understand what the women that society thought was pretty looked very different from me. And I had no way of understanding how to get to that place, right? And I started putting on a little bit of weight. So now the tape kind of went to I'm fat too, and I'm stupid, and these types of things, which really unfortunately did shape my life to be a life of a lot of challenges. I do believe that the tapes that I played in my head were probably the number one contributor to the shortcomings of my life. If nothing else, they really didn't help. So, self-kindness is really a big thing, because had I been able to be kinder to myself, perhaps I could have said something more loving to myself, like, I don't look like the other girls, but I got this great red hair. Or I could have said, but I'm funny, and I'm worth loving. I love others, and I'm worth loving. I wish I could have understood at that time about tapes and played myself some that were maybe a little bit more loving and careful of the way that I was growing up. Self-kindness is directly, energetically tied to our hearts. For the metaphysical community out there, we know we have chakras, which are energy centers that spin kind of like the inner workings of a clock within our body. They're the energy that really keeps us going. Um, and when one of those energetic centers is off, it can affect the ones around it. So our heart's the biggest energy center of our body. And this is physics. This isn't metaphysics. Though metaphysics as a community embraces this understanding, there's a lot of physics behind why our energy centers work and that they are there. And what does that mean? I mean, look at your fingertips, for example, okay? If you look at your fingertips, you're going to see all the little circles, kind of like a tree trunk on your um, tips of your fingers. Well, that's because of energy. That those rings that we have, they're not to stick to walls and climb around like a lizard. They are there because energy has shaped them, and each one of our fingertips is also an energy center. But the heart's the big one. Our heart is directly energetically tied to the center of our whole being. Our self-worth, our self-love, our self-acceptance, all that resides in there. So when we act in a way contrary to those things, or that is not loving, accepting, has no worth, that screws up that energy center. Words do make a difference, and we'll talk more about that maybe at another time, but words do make a difference. Um, We love ourselves with our heart. That's our God center. That's our God spark. I believe this. I know that maybe you're more comfortable believing that our heart is just a chamber of four that beats. Maybe you think it is an energy center. I personally think it's our God spark. I think that's where the divine and the human being combine. Um, and I believe that this center is the most important for our well-being, because it does dictate what we say to ourselves and how we see the world around us. I think it's kind of funny that the heart is all about our personal selves, right? Our self-feelings, our self-acceptance, lovingness, all these things go with our heart. Yet we say, I love you with all my heart, but the heart really is about you. For people who do study chakras and things. Our relationship center is in our sacral, right below our belly button. But it sounds kind of stupid to say I love you with all my stomach. So, I mean, my husband and I make that joke all the time. But our relationship center with other people are down there. Our heart is directly related to our feelings of ourself. So metaphysical overview, I guess I could maybe offer a little more information there. If you're somebody who's looking to kind of correct the heart space a bit, start playing those tapes in your head. Start flooding your head with some of those positive things. I love myself, would be a great thing to say. I am comfortable with who I am. would be another great thing to say. Setting intentions, figure out what the tapes are that you play, and releasing them and flooding your mind with good intentions. So that's why it's important to be kind to ourselves. But what does it mean to be kind to ourselves? Being kind to ourselves is really quite different than just understanding that we should. It means to treat ourselves with the love, care, compassion, forgiveness, and endless understanding, unconditional love that we would give to our